Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Scuttlebutt. I'm your host, Ryan Ahl, Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. We're a nonprofit in Western PA whose mission is to create communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. Today, we took a portion of one of our Monday night happy hour Zoom programs where we had a presentation by a former veteran service officer who talked a lot about the PACT Act. He presented a PowerPoint, gave us a lot of great details and information about it. And then we switched gears and we talk with our normal co-host, Army veteran Ryan Ahl, about his take on the PACT Act, information that he has through the Vet Center and what he's been able to gather. Also, his take as a post 9/11 war veteran, what it means to him that this legislation has passed. So I think it's going to be a very informative and educational podcast for you today. So I hope you enjoy it. Please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube so you're the first to know whenever we release new episodes. If you have any questions about the PACT Act, we'll have some stuff in the description here that you can find online. But I do understand that everything is online about this. So if you need any more information, just check it out, Google it. Both Ron and Ryan both talk about this in our separate interviews. And I hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you for joining. Gionta retired, but we're employing you tonight to dip back into the old driver's seat and give us an update on the PACT Act. I have the PowerPoints. You let me know where I need to go with it, but happy to have you here.
That sounds great, Sean. Thank you. And okay, Sean, we ready to start with the first slide? Okay, tonight we're going to talk about the PACT Act of 2022. Next slide. The PACT Act is a new law that was just signed on August the 10th. It went into existence to full effect. It actually expands the VA healthcare and benefits to veterans exposed to burn pits and other toxic substances. The law is going to help us provide generations of veterans and their survivors the care and the benefits that they've earned and deserved. Next slide. Okay, what is the PACT Act and how will it affect my VA benefits and care? It's perhaps the largest healthcare benefit expansion in VA history. It's actually named after Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson. And it expands and extends eligibility for VA healthcare for veterans with toxic exposures for veterans of Vietnam, the Gulf War, and post 9/11 eras. There are 20 new presumptive conditions for the burn pits and toxic exposure. It adds more presumptive exposure locations to Agent Orange and radiation. That is very, very important to all of our Vietnam veterans. There's things that come out that I wasn't even aware about, and Dawn Nemchek brought it to my attention. It also requires the VA to provide toxic exposure screening to every veteran enrolled in VA healthcare. And it helps us also to improve research, staff education, and treatment-related toxic exposures. And if you're a veteran or a survivor of a veteran, you can also file claims now to apply for PACT Act-related benefits. Next slide. To get a VA disability rating, your disability must connect to your military service. And for many health conditions, you need to prove that your service caused your condition. But for some conditions, the VA is going to automatically assume or presume that service caused your condition. We call these presumptive conditions. For instance, if you were boots on the ground in Vietnam for just one day, it is presumed that you were exposed to Agent Orange. And the medical conditions that are a direct result of exposure to Agent Orange become presumptive conditions. Next slide. So let's talk about Gulf War era and post 9/11 veteran eligibility. What burn pit and other toxic exposure conditions are now presumptive? And this is a complete list that I was able to secure off of the VA website of the conditions, the presumptive conditions that have applied to veterans exposed to toxic exposure and burn pits. Now, if a veteran just goes to the VA and says, I want to file a claim for being exposed to burn pits, well, you can't really do that. But if you have been diagnosed with one of the illnesses as detailed here on this slide, you can go and file a claim with the VA. And it's a process where you fill out the forms, it goes and they have you get an exam and everything. But it's presumed, though, because of your service within the era and location, and we'll get into that, that if you do have one of these illnesses, it's presumed that you were exposed to the burn pits. Next slide. Also, there are other illnesses that are also presumptive, and this is a complete list as delineated in the PACT Act. So if any veteran has one of these illnesses, like let's say asthma, and that was diagnosed after service, it's presumed that your asthma was directly related to the fact that you were exposed to the burn pits in the area of operations. Other things like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, chronic sinusitis, and I've seen a lot of claims for the chronic rhinitis and sinusitis whenever I was working for the VA helping veterans do their claims. One thing I hadn't seen until this act came through was emphysema, and that's another one that's very important. So you can see the list of illnesses that are afflicting our veterans that were exposed to the burn pits. Next slide. How do you know if you have a presumptive exposure to burn pits? Well, if you served in any of these locations listed on these slides, then it is assumed that you were exposed to the toxins from burn pits. And what's really critical, look at the very bottom one, airspace above any of these locations. Let's talk about people who are flying maybe out of Kuwait in aircraft, and they're going into the area where the burn pits were, okay? That, like in Afghanistan, maybe they're flying a C-130 to go in and bring back supplies. Again, that's really important that airspace is now a consideration in the assumption that you were exposed. Next slide. Locations on or after August 2nd, 1990. And that is the kickoff of Operation Desert Shield. These are those locations. Next slide. Service eligibility dates. Now, what happens here is this. You have to have at least one of these must be true for your active duty service. You must have served in the theater of combat operations during the period of war after the Persian Gulf War, or you served in combat against hostile force during a period of hostilities after November 11th, 1998. What a lot of folks don't realize is we had operations Southern Watch and Northern Watch after Operation Desert Storm, where we were still putting our veterans in harm's way during rotations over into the area of operations after the storm. But also, this must be true too. You were discharged or released on or after October 1st, 2013. Go to the next slide. If you meet the requirements listed here, you can receive care. You can enroll in during the special enrollment period between October 1st of 2022 and October 1st of 2023. And at least one of these must be true of your active duty service. You served in the theater of combat operations during the period of war after the Persian Gulf War. You served in combat against a hostile force during the period of hostilities after November of 1998. And both of these issues must be true. You were discharged or released between September 11th, 2001 and October 1 of 2013, and you have not enrolled in VA healthcare yet. Next slide. For Vietnam era eligibility, and this is huge, based on the PACT Act, the VA has added 2 new Agent Orange presumptive conditions: high blood pressure, also known as hypertension, and monoclonal gammopathy of undetermined significance, MGUS. It's like moderate elevated levels of abnormal immunoglobulin protein. There's a protein that attacks your immune system called M protein, and it's in your blood. So these are 2 new presumptives added to Vietnam era veterans. Next slide. Now, this is really important. What new Agent Orange presumptive locations will the VA add? Prior to this, we had flight lines in Thailand. We had the DMZ in between North Korea and South Korea, and we had South Vietnam, North Vietnam, any place in Vietnam, and we had also blue water Navy within 12 nautical miles of the shores of Vietnam. Now, the United States government is saying any United States or Royal Thai military air base in Thailand from January 9th, 1962 through June 30th, 1976. If you were in Laos from December 1st of 65 through September 30th of 69, if you were in Cambodia at Mamet or Krek or Kampong Kam province from April 16th, 1969 through April 30th of 1969. Guam, American Samoa into territorial waters off of Guam or American Samoa from January 9th, 1962 through July 30th, 1980. And what I have heard is a lot of the Agent Orange drums that were done in Vietnam were shipped to Guam. Okay, so literally a lot of the excess Agent Orange and the empty drums were sent to Guam, and Guam has become contaminated. Johnston Atoll, or on a ship that was called at Johnston Atoll from January 1st, 1970, I can't see the last digit, through
72 through September 30th, 1977.
Right. So we're wondering, what is Johnston Atoll? It's an uninhabited island used by the United States military for nearly 70 years. The isolated atoll was under the control of the United States military, and during that time, it was variously used as a naval refueling depot, an air base, and a testing site for nuclear and biological weapons, and a secret missile base. It was also a site and disposal area for chemical weapons of Agent Orange. Now, the United States Air Force controls who goes in and who comes out of the atoll. So it would have been, the only way somebody would have been anywhere near the atoll is if they were on a mission to take something there or pick something up. But this was just added to the list of places where Agent Orange is a presumed location. Let's go to the next slide. So what new radiation presumptive locations will the VA add? And this is all, by the way, done by law. The cleanup at Iwatok Atoll from January 1st of 77 through December 1 of 80. The cleanup of an Air Force B-52 bomber that was carrying nuclear weapons off the coast of Palmares, Spain from January 17, 1966 through March 31st, 1966. Also, the response to the fire on board an Air Force B-52 bomber carrying nuclear weapons near Thule Air Base in Greenland from January 21st, 1968 to September 25th of 68. These radiation locations were never added until this new PACT Act was passed and signed. Next slide. Getting benefits. If you haven't filed a claim yet for a presumptive condition, you can always file a new claim online now. You can do it by mail. You can do it in person at your local VA Benefits Administration Center. In Pittsburgh, where the VA is located on the 17th floor of the Federal Building. You dial area code 412-395-6160, and you can make an appointment over the phone to come in and talk to a representative, an employee of the VA about your claim. But also very important, and I tell every veteran this, it's to your advantage to go and contact a veteran service organization like the VFW, the AMVETS, Vietnam Veterans of America, American Legion, the DAV, and etc. In Pittsburgh, all of these organizations are located on the 16th floor of the Federal Building in downtown Pittsburgh, but they're also located in the federal buildings at other cities across the United States. If the VA has denied your disability claim in the past for one of these situations, the VA will now consider your condition presumptive, and you can resubmit what's called a supplemental claim. And there's the form number, and you can find it on the internet by Googling VA Form 20-0995. It's a claim for almost like for asking them to reconsider your claim because you were denied, and now this law has been passed, and you were at this particular location like Guam, and you're suffering from, let's say, bladder cancer. And it's presumed that when you were at Guam during that period, you were exposed to Agent Orange. And the VA will review your claim all over again and reopen it. Next slide. Information for survivors. There's a monthly VA disability indemnity compensation, what's called VA DIC payments. to either surviving spouses, dependent children under the age of 18 or in college under the age of 23, or a parent of a veteran who died from a service-connected disability. A one-time accrued benefit payment. You may qualify if you're the surviving spouse, dependent child, or dependent parent. And I've actually helped parents in filing claims for their sons or daughters who were exposed to the contaminated water at Camp Lejeune, and they got a one-time payment. Okay. Healthcare through the Civilian Health and Medical Program, Department of Veterans Affairs, called CHAMP VA. You may qualify if you're the survivor of a dependent of a veteran who died with a service-connected disability. And also, there's also burial allowance to help with veterans' burial and funeral costs. And you may qualify to file a claim for burial allowance if you're the veteran's surviving spouse, partner, child, or parent. Next slide. So what if the VA denied my DIC claim and I think I'm eligible? Well, you can submit a new application for VA dependency and indemnity compensation. This is the form, the VA form 21P-534EZ, application for DIC. The VA form 21P-535, application for dependency. This is for the kids or for the parents, and indemnity compensation by parents. Note, if the VA denied your claim in the past and you think you may be eligible now, they will try to contact you and may be able to reevaluate your claim. However, based on a number of claims being processed today, you don't have to wait. You could actually reapply. It's better to be proactive. Let's go to the next slide. Now, these are informational websites, www.va.gov. Basically, that's the VA's website. There's also disability dependency indemnity compensation website, resources, the PACT Act, your VA benefits. The whitehouse.gov has the statements regarding the signing of the PACT Act. And also on the bottom is congress.gov. That is the actual law that you can look at and read. Everything the VA does when it comes to benefits for veterans is governed under Title 38 United States Code. It's federal law, and it has to be approved by Congress and signed off by the president. The VA just doesn't make things happen. It has to be by law. And once it's in law, the VA acts accordingly and modifies their regulations on how to process these claims. Next slide. I'd just like to say I am retired Air Force. I'm a retired VA employee, but the slides and information that I presented this forum is a direct result of my personal research as a citizen from various websites on the internet and the information presented. It is not a statement of the United States government. I had to say that because I'm retired from the VA. I'm a retired Air Force colonel, and I don't have a right to speak on behalf of the government. So this was all my research that I did as Todd had asked me to do.
And now joining me now is Army veteran Ryan Ahl. Ryan, we just had sort of our PowerPoint presentation from Ron Gionta about some of the particulars of the PACT Act. I thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring you in as a frequent co-host and a post 9/11 vet to talk about the PACT Act. I figured we would just get sort of your take on this and what it means for your generation, the post 9/11 war generation of vets.
Yeah, well, I think it means a lot. And this was something that it felt like a long time coming. And I think it was a roller coaster of emotions, watching it move through, its legislative life cycle in DC. And as we all know, there was a passage and it seemed fine, and then it got kicked back, and many of us don't know all the particulars, and I don't want to speak too much to that, but it got kicked back and people got really upset, and then there was protesting involved, and then then it eventually got passed, which is great, and I think that that's the right thing to do, obviously, and it expands not just for my generation but for previous generations as well, like some of these healthcare benefits and presumptive conditions, which Ron talked about. Which is really important because it does make things a lot easier for veterans. If they come in and they can prove their exposure to something and they have this certain list of illnesses, well, then it's automatic. And I think that goes counter to what so much of the stigma of applying for benefits is, because you talk with a lot of veterans and they've waited a long time for things, and and it's really hard to get these disability claims through. And so much of that process has improved over the years. I know that when I went through that process, I was expecting it to take a long time, and it actually went a lot faster than I thought it would. It was 4 months from application to payment, which was very fast. And I think that we need to get the word out about that this process is quicker. So if you are nervous about applying for these benefits, I think that you should move forward, and you deserve these benefits, right? So don't be afraid to apply for them. I think is like a big message that I want to get out, right? If you are injured and the military hurt you, like, apply for your benefits. You earned them. And that kind of leads me to my biggest feeling about this, is that we have to take care of our veterans. And we've talked about this before on the Scuttlebutt, but this is part of the cost of war, right? When we say we're going to put our sons and daughters in harm's way, it's not just while they're there. It includes everything that happens to them and everything that continues to happen to them, because their life is going to be changed in a lot of ways, and their health is going to be affected in many ways. Their physical health, their mental health, their life, their relationships are all going to be affected in some way by their participation in whatever conflict they were in. And so I think it's important to get that message out there as well, as this is when we support a conflict, and putting people in harm's way, like this has to be included in that calculus as well. And so I think it's great that this legislation was passed, and I hope that it continues to move forward, and that we can move quickly. And in the sense of of DC and legislation, like, this moved relatively quickly, and we are standing on the shoulders of our Vietnam veterans right now, and that's another big piece of this. Yeah. These guys went through hell to get the benefits that they deserved, especially when it came to Agent Orange, and it took them a long time. And that has been a part of making sure that the population and that the legislators, understand that these benefits need to be applied and given to service members. So I think that's a big thing, is like, get your benefits. I'm glad that these are coming through. This is the cost of war, and that we owe a lot to our Vietnam veterans for advocating and getting these things in place, so that it doesn't take us as long as post 9/11 veterans to get our benefits as it did them.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything that was confusing about it? Like, there's a lot of information that sort of came out with the PACT Act. Is there anything that confused you as a veteran that you had to sort of suss through or figure out or talk to other veterans about to understand?
Yeah, so they had previously, the VA had put out a long time ago, like, this burn pit registry. So I was a little bit confused on, like, how is that interacting with this? If I've registered on the burn pit registry, does that make me kind of automatically eligible for some of these resources? I wasn't sure. And then the same thing with, like, what else is included in the PACT Act? Because it did include, like, things about Agent Orange and other things like that. So, still digging through all of that. And I think that was, like, the big thing. And what is kind of being confused, I think, a little bit, is, like, there's this Camp Lejeune water piece to it, and what those people are eligible for. And then there's, like, a civil lawsuit that's, like, separate from that you see commercials on all the time about applying for these, getting involved in this lawsuit. And I do want to stress that those are, like, two separate things. You should always talk to a veteran service officer when you're talking about VA benefits. That is free. You should never pay anybody anything to talk to a veteran service officer about the veteran benefits that you're eligible for. Mm-hmm. And the lawsuit is going to be completely separate from that. So that's a whole separate process. There'll probably be more guidance and talking points from the VA coming out about that, but don't let that don't confuse the two, right? Like, do apply for your benefits, whatever they may be, whatever you're applying for, whatever toxic exposure you're applying for, apply for those. And if you then feel independently comfortable with getting involved in the lawsuit, then do that separately. But that is separate from a VA process. So yeah, I think that's probably the most confusing part.
And you mentioned before that, relatively speaking for Congress, this actually happened pretty quickly. But how long was this, even the idea of the bill sort of being bounced around? Like, how long did it take from, people starting to advocate for the fact that, hey, I'm having problems due to my exposure to burn pits, to the PACT Act being passed?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing was that it was years ago that they put out that burn pit registry, and I think behind the scenes that kind of like got the ball rolling and to a certain extent. So I think they've been aware of something for a long time, that that they needed to be a little bit more proactive with this, and then you started seeing some deaths from things that were kind of like not quite explainable, but like when people coming back and just getting like strangely sick with a certain type of cancer or whatever. So they I think that is really good that they moved quickly. And what was interesting was like um, uh, we've become a lot more aware in general about how exposure to toxins can have a very adverse health effect. And it was I think kind of fitting that John Stewart, who was such an advocate for the firefighters on 9/11, that exposure that they dealt through, like he kind of like easily kind of straddled the bridge there to becoming a veteran or an advocate for veterans benefits in the same way. And regardless of what you think about the guy's politics or his comedy, it doesn't quite matter. But he still was a powerful voice trying to do the right thing, which was to get these benefits passed. And I think that the veteran community in general owes him a debt of gratitude, because, like I said, this wasn't just for post 9/11 veterans; it was for a lot of other people. So
Right.
I think that that's great.
Now, when you were in Iraq, did you ever see burn pits, and did you know like what they were burning in them? Like, what exactly? Understand technically a burn pit is you throw stuff in there and you burn it to get rid of trash, to get rid of different things. What all was being thrown into these things?
So the most common thing was trash. But there were certain remote outposts that I was at where they were burning human waste, right? Like human feces and urine, and burning those with like diesel fuel, and literally guys having to go up there and like stir the pot, and that was weird.
Yeah.
But there was a couple other because Iraqi locals would do this as well, so they don't have the same kind of environmental regulations, that we might have here. So one of the big exposures I remember having was seeing. That was kind of a little bit of a story, but we were out in the desert on a patrol, and we got hey, there's something weird going out here in the desert, so we want you to go check it out. And we're like, okay. So we go out there, and it's night and it's dark, and we're walking through the desert, and we're walking towards this light, and we don't know what it is, but you can see it bright as day in night vision, and it's out there. So we're walking towards there, and all of a sudden we're like walking in this like mud, and I was like, that's weird. Like, we're in the desert, we're miles from a river, but I'm walking through this mud. And we get up there. Turns out it was just a guy like burning car batteries. And we had just walked through all of that waste of him like watering and burning these car batteries, and it was just like coming down into the wadi, and
Wow.
we had just like walked through all of that chemical waste. And so he wasn't doing anything wrong. We were sent out there to make sure he wasn't like building any IEDs or something.
Right.
But I remember that by the time I got back to our vehicle, my feet were itchy, and I took off my boots, and like my socks were like discolored, like they were like in a really weird color, and I took those off. And so we got back, and I dropped all my gear, and I left my boots there. And the next day when I went out there, the boots were just like brittle, like they just like broke apart, like they just fell apart.
Oh no.
I was like, some of that is probably in me, like right now, like that's weird. So
Yeah.
it's just all sorts of things happen. But yeah, in general, that's a specific answer to your question. But in general, yeah, a lot of waste of a lot of different kinds, because there was no this is a common practice in a war zone. You don't have trash companies coming out to pick up. I mean, in some ways you do to a certain extent, but a lot of the times the most effective way to do it is to burn it.
Right.
Yeah.
How would a veteran make a claim or apply for the benefits? What's the best route for them to do that?
The same way they would apply for any other benefits, to to talk with a veteran service officer. So the easiest way to apply for disability is to fill out a VA form 21-526EZ, and you can do that by speaking with any veteran service officer. And lots of non-government organizations are going to have veteran service officers, the DAV, the VFW, AMVETS, and the VA has their own as well. So get in touch with a veteran service officer. You should always apply also an intent to file, and then also apply when you submit all the paperwork with the actual filing. So that's the easiest way to do it. And on there, you'll list kind of what you're applying for, like what conditions you have that you think are service related. And then that'll go through a whole process. It'll be adjudicated. You'll be sent out for exams. Typically, you're going to be sent to a private doctor, and it all works pretty quickly. They kind of contracted it out. So you're going to go to the closest expert that is VA qualified to make that assessment on you. You'll get paid to go there. They'll pay you mileage to go there. And then you'll get the assessment, and then that doctor, whether it's VA or private, more than likely it's going to be a private doctor. And then they're going to send that information back to the VA. And they're going to look at it and determine whether it was service connected or not. And then it'll go to an adjudicator, and then that person will decide at what level, right, that how does that impact your life and how severely it does. And that's where you get your percentage from. And a note about percentages, it's a weird calculation. So this can be frustrating to some veterans because you're like, I have 20% for hearing and 30% for my knees. That's 20 plus 30, that equals 50. Not necessarily, right? The way it typically works is like, how much do those things affect your overall life? So that might actually be 40%. So it's not always like a 1-for-1 addition. You'll get, you can get like 50% for something and 10% for something else, but you won't be at 60, you'll still be at 50, because they're kind of, when they give you the overall rating, they're basically overall rating how much is this impacting your life in general. Does that,
right.
So that can be confusing and frustrating for some veterans. There is a pretty good resource out there called a VA Good Calculator. If you Google that, you can kind of go in there and you can see if I have different disabilities, what will my percentage, what is my percentage in different abilities? How many dependents do I have? And what my payment is going to be, and what my overall disability will be. So that's a quick way to kind of gauge like what you think, what you'll probably be at. VA.gov is a great resource. You can go on there. You can get a profile at any hospital. You can get a My Health eVet profile. It's a great profile to have. If you go to a hospital, you can get upgraded to a premium account because they'll verify who you are. You can get more in-depth information, but you can follow your claims process along in there. And you can also find a whole bunch of other things at va.gov once you log in and have a My Health eVet account. You can get your certificates of eligibility for your home loans, or find out how much GI Bill eligibility you have, or look at your VA health records. It's a pretty good website to have. So I do encourage veterans to get a My Health eVet account, and then it's all right there on va.gov. It makes it a lot easier.
What have you been hearing from the vet community, veterans from both your era and not, about the passing of the PACT Act and how it's going to help them?
I think it's for the most part exciting, because many of us were exposed to different things. And I think it's also nice to just have it in your back pocket, right? Like, you don't know what health effects you could have later, right? Like, I'm 38, relatively healthy, but if I develop brain cancer in 2 years, it's going to be nice to know that like that will make it easier on my family and myself to like get those benefits if it is a service connected disability. So I think that if there's a great peace of mind thing. So I think that that's probably what most veterans are excited about. Like, when you start getting a little older, you get a lot more happy about being in good health, right? We don't think about it when we're younger. But you also start to become a little bit more aware of your mortality, right? Your body hurts more, and you're just, and you're longer for you to recover from getting hurt. So it's really nice to have that peace of mind that if something does come up later, it will be a lot easier, and you're not going to have to fight as hard to get those benefits. So I think that when speaking with veterans, I think that's the most important thing.
You mentioned earlier that it's good for representatives to sort of understand that when they send our servicemen and women into harm's way, that we should be covering them and protecting them, not only in the battlefield, but when they get home. In a lot of ways, many of our representatives, a vast majority, are civilians. But my next question is, what should the regular civilian like myself understand about the PACT Act? If I were to talk to a veteran about it, what should I know about this?
I think that it's providing much needed healthcare, and it's going to provide better access for people who may have lost that access, and make it easier for them to legally get in within the VA healthcare, and get the help that they need, whether it's now or in the future. And I think that's probably the most important part about it.
Mm-hmm. And where does it go from here? So it's been passed. There's some processing time. It seems like it might take a while for some claims of benefits to be processed. How is the VA going to handle this huge influx of applications or claims? Where do we see it going?
Yeah. So if you're not familiar, right, the Veterans Health Administration, where all the hospitals are, is separate from the Veterans Benefit Administration. So that's two separate kind of entities under the VA umbrella. The VBA, the Benefits Administration, is going to be the one doing all of the claims for injuries. They are hiring a ton of people. They have been for over a year in anticipation of this and some other legislation that passed. So they're going to be prepared to keep with the timeliness of those applications. That's what they're doing. They're hiring a bunch of people. On the healthcare side, there's going to be a phased-in approach to the eligibility of when people become eligible, depending on when they served. So then that is going to be part of that as well. So they're going to phase it in and work through those processes, and then doing outreach, and then the whole time doing outreach to people to make sure that they understand. So the other big benefit of that burn pit registry, which we talked about, is that they have a roster of people now that they can reach out to and say, hey, you're now eligible, or hey, you need to come in for this, or hey, this was passed, or this needs to this is something that you're not eligible for. So that's the other big piece of it. So I think they're working both sides of that at the same time.
Well, Ryan, this has been a lot of great information here. I want to make sure that we cover everything that you'd like to cover before signing off. So anything else we should know?
I think that the best part about this is that veterans are going to get the help and healthcare that they need, and that's a good thing. And I'm glad that we could come together and make that happen. And I hope that it continues to move forward smoothly. There's always going to be some bumps in the road, but I think that taking care of our veterans is something that we need to do. And so I'm glad that it happened.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, Ryan. For anyone listening, please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube so you're the first to know whenever we release new episodes. And if you want more information about the PACT Act, check out our descriptions. There's a wealth of information online. You can always email me at Sean, SHAUN, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. Or if anybody has a question for you, Ryan, I know you work at the Vet Center. Is that an avenue that somebody could take to get more information?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So I work at the Pittsburgh Vet Center. You can reach any Vet Center resource by going to vetcenter.va.gov. There are over 300 vet centers across the country. We provide free and confidential mental health counseling and readjustment counseling to veterans and their families. And you can come here for more information on the PACT Act, more information on getting into VA healthcare, and more information on applying for a service-connected disability. And we would be happy to help you. And our phone numbers answer 24/7.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate the time and the info, and we look forward to seeing everyone on a future episode of the Scuttlebutt. Thank you for watching this episode of The Scuttlebutt. I'd like to take a moment to thank both of our sponsors, the first being D&D Metal Recycling and Auto Salvage. They began as a small hauling and used auto parts operation in the Pittsburgh area in the late 1970s, but they've grown into a full-service metal recycling company with 2 locations, Lawrenceville and Tarentum. D&D accepts all types of metal, both ferrous and non-ferrous, that may be generated by industrial manufacturing, construction and demolition, small commercial entities, as well as individual customers. They have a wide variety of material handling equipment and are capable of managing any type of job in a timely and efficient manner. You can contact them for quotes and availability at D&D. That's D&D autosalvage.com. Thank you so much to D&D. They've been a sponsor for quite some time, and we really appreciate their support. The second being tobacco-free Adagio Health. They are dedicated to reducing and preventing tobacco use and to getting the word out about the hazards of smoking and secondhand smoke. They're all about health. So they want people to quit, and they have classes and nicotine replacement therapy and a popular quit line, which is the easiest number to remember ever, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. They also educate people, children especially, about tobacco use from cigarettes, cigars, pipes, chew, snuff, and other nicotine products like vaping. Finally, tobacco-free Adagio Health advocates for public and private policies that ensure healthy places to live, work, and play. You can learn all of what tobacco-free Adagio Health offers at tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org, or you can watch our recent episode with tobacco-free Adagio Health on the Scuttlebutt, where they talk about a lot of the programs that they offer for those who are looking to quit. Thank you to both of our sponsors for their continued support of the Scuttlebutt podcast. We really appreciate it. Thanks.